I'm excited to have Chris Dyer on the podcast today. Chris is Inc. Magazine's #1 leadership speaker, a 3-time best-selling author, and the former CEO of People G2, a company he built and sold after 20 years that earned Best Place to Work recognition 15 times. He's delivered over 300 keynotes across 21 countries for organizations including NASA, Johnson & Johnson, and Southwest Airlines. Chris is also CEO of Hopetape USA and Chief Revenue Officer at EngageBeast.ai. His newest book, Moments That Matter, reveals why leaders miss the moments of greatest impact and provides a practical framework for showing up when it counts. Chris, I'm so glad you're here, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
I would love to start with you sharing a little bit of your story with our listeners. I hit a few of the high points, but I'd love to hear particularly about your journey and your development as a leader. How did you get started?
Boy, I'm gonna get how far back do you want to go? It's like, I think I came out, not to be too graphic, in the hospital room, already telling people like, hey, I think we should improve this over here, and we should do, like, I don't know. I've always been, we need someone to be in charge, and like my hand was already up halfway before they finished their sentence.
Nice.
I don't know why that is. Maybe it's I'm a firstborn, that's part of it. Certainly, my grandfather was an entrepreneur. I think my grandparents, my parents, just the way parents always were volunteering at charity organizations or church things, or, just, I think there was that model of like, you want to do something, you want to see change, you're the one to do it. And
That's it.
right. And so I just kind of gravitated towards that. And then took a little detour. Like when I graduated college, I went and worked in helping open up a bunch of hotels in Hollywood, which was fun and exciting. And then I went and worked for another background check company. And it wasn't until 9/11 happened, when I used to go in early, like at 6:00 in the morning to start my day. I'm watching that thing happen in real time. And a lot of people on the West Coast were waking up to it had already happened. And so I was watching it in real time. And that was this moment where I was like, oh, you idiot. You're supposed to be an entrepreneur. You're supposed to be running a business. This was your dream, your goal. And I was playing it safe, working for somebody else, have a little mortgage, a little car payment, and just, and then that changed everything. I quit that job and went and started my first company. So
Wow.
I always knew I wanted to be a leader, except for that little spot in the middle where I got a little confused and off the path,
That's awesome. Making that leap from security, which I put in quotes because we all know working for somebody else it really means that you're at the mercy of the person that you're working for, right? That job could end anytime. But it feels safe. It feels secure. It feels stable. Making that leap, what was that like for you?
It was a lot of ramen and tuna fish. It was, it was a real stretch. It was my dad, fortunately, had just retired from being a police officer for 25, 30 years. And so he was like, hey, you want to start a business? I'll start one with you. And so I kind of had at least some support in that, and that helped us kind of get going. But I went with no salary for, I don't know, close to a year or something.
My goodness.
And trying to build it and figure it out. And, every dollar we made went back into some piece of equipment or hiring somebody or whatever it is we needed to make that business successful. And that meant that, I did a whole lot of minimal everything, no vacations, no nothing, and I had a tiny bit of savings. Fortunately, my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, it all worked out. Like somehow it was just the right time. I always tell people like it was kind of wait for the right time. What's funny is when you make the decision to do something, it magically becomes the right time. Because I think
That's good.
that pressure, right? Like no one's like ready to have a child, but as soon as you have a child, well, then
That's
you got to figure it out, right?
That's so true. Well said. So, one of the things that jumped out about you is that the company that you built earned Best Place to Work recognition 15 times. That is remarkable, and it is not common. Why did that happen?
Let's see, probably two things: a lot of hard work and a lot of experimentation.
Mm.
And so that is the actual application of what we did. I would say if I want to take a step back from that, like what happened right before then, I made the decision that I needed to radically change the culture back in 2009. Everything we had done from 2001 to 2009 really revolved some version of leadership that I learned from sports coaches, teachers, and my parents. And like, that's okay, but really you can't scale a company with that kind of leadership. And that's not something people teach you. They don't tell you that. You can rah 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 and be a sports coach or whatever, or do as I say because I said so type of a leader, and that'll work when you got 5 people in an office. It doesn't work when you got thousands of people you're responsible. And so I had to unlearn some behaviors, and I had to turn myself into what I like to refer to as the virtual machete, which is every day I would spend time not helping anybody actually do their job. I was trying to figure out how to help them do their job better.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
that turned into, well, should we be meeting this way or should we be meeting a different way? Should we be, running projects this way or should we be doing Scrum and Agile? Should we be? It was all these experimentations of what's the best way for us to collaborate, work, organize our people, and do all of this. And we tried things that sucked for us, that worked for other people. We tried things that worked great for us. And that just became this constant like experimentation. And eventually, probably, this is probably what happens to like most people who run marathons or triathlons and things like that. You start to get you get kind of good and you kind of see the difference, and people start noticing and they start saying, geez, you look like you work out, or geez, you look like you lost weight. Like that kind of like, geez, your company's doing well. Like, boy, people really seem happier. Our engagement scores are going up. And it became this like, well, let's keep it going. Like, in my mind, it was, how do I get to the top of the mountain? Turns out you can't really ever get to the top, but you can get close. You can see the summit. But that was like the philosophy. And that helped us then, to my surprise, start winning those awards and getting that recognition, because we were constantly thinking about how to adapt and change and deliver a different experience for our people. Ultimately, what I was trying to do was create the best place that my people were ever going to work.
Mm. Wow.
And that's a big
That's
difference than
bold.
just, I want to have a good culture or I want to have, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? There's a difference. And I've said this a few times recently, but like, unlike the Olympics, which we just, if you're watching this fresh, we just went through the Winter Olympics. There can only be one gold medalist
That's right.
in an event. But when it comes to culture, when it comes to your organization, every organization and every team can have this goal and achieve it. And it is not interdependent on some other company. Yes, there are lists of best places to work, but I'm talking about for you personally. You can make your team the best team they'll ever work on. You can make your company the best company they're going to work for, your division, your department, whatever that framing is, whatever you have actual authority over, then you can do that. And that is achievable regardless of anything else that's happening in the world. And that stretch goal, that's the difference, right? When you get everyone thinking about how do we do that, that's the
Yeah.
difference.
Oh, that's so good. And this is what you write about in your new book, Moments That Matter.
Well, in the new book, it's a little different. So I would say my first 3 books, I did a book on culture. Then I got really lucky and launched a book in March, the month we went into COVID, on remote work.
Oh, wow. Timely.
And then everyone said, forget remote work. And so I went back and relaunched the culture book, doubled it up, really beefed it up, and gave a lot more content and examples and case studies. And so I would say kind of what we talked about just now was really what was in my last book on the power of company culture, the second edition, about what were those things and all of that. In response to what I have seen in the last year and a half, which is an absolute resistance at times, fear, and everything around all of the change that is happening. We've been dealing with that. I've been doing a ton of keynotes around how to deal with change, how to thrive through all of this relentless change. But I noticed that inside of that was another little story about how do leaders know when they need to, like I did, what I could do, I am going to be the virtual machete now. Like I'm going to step up and we're going to do this big thing and try to create this big change. How do I, as a leader, know, or as a parent, as a spouse, as a neighbor, whatever that relationship is, this book will give you that framework. It doesn't have to be work, and half of the examples in the book are not work related. It's how do I, in any relationship, know when to step up? Because we've been told for years, don't sweat the small stuff. And that's wonderful advice. But you better sweat the big stuff. Like no one's saying, what's the counter to that? The counter
Right.
is you better show up for the big stuff, big time for your people. If you're going to let the little stuff go and let them handle it and not get frustrated by little things, that means you got to step up big. And so this is my playbook for people on how do I know when I'm supposed to show up? How am I supposed to know when this is a big moment? And
Mm.
then what do I do? And then how do I make sure people know what the heck happened so that we can
Mm.
deliver that safety and repeatable experience and all, like, if I did something great for you and you're my neighbor, like if none of the other neighbors know that, then they're not going to know I'm a good neighbor.
Mm.
Right. And,
Yeah.
and maybe that's something they need to know, not because I want to look good or because I want to show off, but like you had a problem and I showed up for you. They know if they have a problem, I'm going to show up for them, which means that they're going to show up for me if I have a problem. Like it's that reciprocal kind of like, how do you create a real community? And that's making sure people know the real stories and what's really happening.
Your team has leaned into this. You shared a story with me when we talked before about how you met with some of your team after the business was sold, your first business, right? And they talked about the culture and the environment that you had created there.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love for you to share that because I think that illustrates what you're talking about here, these moments that matter.
Well, when I talked about you can see the summit, you can see the peak, you maybe won't quite get there. This was kind of one of those moments where we'd gone to dinner. There was two former employees and they had done really well with my company. When we sold, they did really well. They were high up executives and they got bonuses and things like that. And then the new company loves them. And the new company's giving them promotions and giving them raises. And so when we're sitting at dinner, we're talking about, the good old days. We're also talking about all the exciting, cool things they're doing. And I'm happy that they're having success in the new company. But by the time we got to the nightcap, the final drink at the end of the night, it suddenly came up that they were mad at me. And I'm just like baffled, I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And what I got from them was one of the people in the room with me that day said, everything's fine with the new company. Like I'd be happy to work at this company any, point in my career. Like they're a good company. There's nothing wrong with it. They weren't complaining in any shape or form, but they said it's not the same. There's something about the value of the work. There's something about my ability to make an impact. There's something about like, it's just not the same. Like what we did before was the best of times.
Mm.
And that realization from them that it was the best of times. And we're all big Office fans. And so people might remember that
Yeah.
Andy Bernard's character says, I wish someone would tell you when you were in the best of times. Because he was reflecting back to when he was just an employee and he wasn't in charge of the branch anymore. And Michael Scott was his boss. And for him, that was the best of times. Of course, it's crazy and ridiculous because Michael Scott was a terrible boss. But that, there was that, like, I wish I knew I was in that moment before I was out of the moment. Right. And so this, if you ever watch The Office, is a great example. Andy Bernard's now running the company, he has a promotion. He's now in charge of the division. Like you would say, things are better for him than he was when he was a salesperson. And yet here he is saying, I wish I had known it was the best of times. So that's what that gentleman was saying. And then the other person in the room said to me, I would give all the money and the promotions back to be back working in the old. And that was just like this, are you kidding me? Like, what am I? And so best worst compliment. And it wasn't, I certainly felt like I was driving the ship in the regards of that. I wanted us to have the best place to work for our people, but they and so many other leaders in the organizations were actually the ones responsible for the things that happened that actually created that environment.
Mm.
So this wasn't a direct compliment to me. It was a direct compliment to the overall leadership and to the organization that we created together. But I started asking them, I'm like, okay, so help me understand why. We're about to depart here. We may never be in this moment again. Why? And it took them a moment to think about it, but then they started telling me about, oh, do you remember the time we did this? Do you remember the time we did that? Do you remember the time we almost lost the $1 million client, but we stayed up till 2 a.m. and we all came together and we made it happen? Like all of these examples. And in my mind, and I was like, okay. And we departed. And the next morning I woke up and I went, they're talking about moments.
Mm. Yeah.
They're not talking about consistency. They're not talking about like personalities. They're not talking about that I cared about them or what. I mean, all of those things were true, but they're talking about big moment. We showed up big. I showed up big. They showed up big. Whatever it is, like we were a moments culture that if you worked for me and like one of your parents passed away, we're sending obscene large amounts of flowers to that funeral. Like, we want you to know we care about you. We understand this is a really big traumatic thing in your life right now. The company is here for you and we support you, and we're going to send the flowers on the giant stand to be in the church or wherever that ceremony's at, to be there to support you on that day. We did big things in big moments, and then pulled way back and let leaders do their thing on the small stuff.
Mm.
And we're not prescriptive about those little things. It was get those big things right. And so that's what the book is about, was like, okay, well, how do we do that? And how do you know? And like, what are other examples in history where like, this is true, that some people don't know, like we almost had a king, right? When the United States was born. There was literally a moment where George Washington stood there and he could have said, I think I'm just going to stay the supreme commander of the military and I'm now your king. And everyone would have said, okay. I mean, literally like half the country was saying he should be the king. Even though we just fought for our independence from a king, he was such a good guy and he was so well liked and so successful. We almost had a king. And he had this moment to say, I know what we just fought for and I know what we want is something better than that. And he went in and relinquished his title in the military. And then years later became president again. There's these big moments where we have to show up and do something big for the benefit of others and benefit of our company or benefit of our community or whatever.
So good. As I think about my journey, I think about moments like that. And as you tell those stories, I think about, oh, wow, those are not the moments that so often you plan for. They don't show up on the quarterly planning or the annual planning. Like, we're going to have a moment in June.
Yeah.
It's more organic than that.
It is a more organic, but you can make sure that when the moments happen, you are being intentional about spreading that around the organization or around that team, that you are, recognizing people. You are, there's lots of different types. There's 7 different types of moments. One of them is recognition moments. So you have to make sure you're recognizing people when these things happen. And that's also part of the culture framework. Recognition is a pretty well understood thing. But there are other moments that you can engineer if you think about it. Now, one of those is inception moments. Inception moments are firsts. So you might think about a first date. That might be the day you fell in love with your spouse or your partner, right? Like first date is that big thing that happened. But the first day at a company is their very first inception moment.
True.
Highly scripted what happened on someone's first day.
Hmm.
We were having turnover, right? Because our job, it was high pressure. Our job was high stakes. We were running background checks to make sure criminals and sex offenders didn't get into places they shouldn't be into. And like, that's a little bit of stress for some people. They make a mistake, they mistype something, like something bad could happen to somebody else in the world. And so that was pressure that some people struggled to deal with. And so we had some turnover and we wanted to fix that. And so what we did is we just highly prescribed what happened. We made sure that they got their laptop, all of their forms and all of the compliance stuff done in advance. Now we even paid them a certain amount of hours in advance. It was on their first check, like to get that stuff done. They got all of their business cards, their swag, like everything had to be done and in their hands before they started on their first day. Or
Wow.
we delayed their first day and then paid them anyways. Like, if they were supposed to start on Monday, we would say, we're so sorry, we're not ready. You're getting paid for Monday. Go enjoy the day. Like, go to the beach, go have a good time. We'll start on Tuesday. And they were like, when that rarely happened, when it did, people were like, really? You don't have to pay me. I'm like, no, you know, but we made sure that like they had, we were fully remote. Sometimes it was on Zoom, but if there was anybody anywhere near them, could they have lunch with someone in the company? Right.
Nice.
Did they meet with their boss right away? Did they meet with their team right away? Did they get assigned a buddy right away to answer their questions? Did we provide them all the resources and videos and trainings? And like we wanted them to hit the ground running on day one if they wanted to. And for them to never have to say, where's this? Or how do I do that? Or what am I supposed to do? No, and also on day one, 95% of the time, sometimes I couldn't do it, but 95% of the time on day one, they met with me. Anybody whose first day it was, they met with me, and I did a 30-minute culture presentation.
Mm.
And it was, here's how our culture works. Here's what I expect. And I need you to be my eyes and ears, because you're now going into my culture with fresh eyes and fresh ears. And if you're not seeing what I'm telling you is supposed to be happening right now, I need you to come back and tell me.
Mm.
Because I can't fix it. If you go out there and you're like, well, that was a bunch of crap Chris told me for 30 minutes, because that's not how this company really works. If you don't give me that feedback right now, I can't fix it.
Good.
Right. And so they got all of that on day one, along with like, we would listen to them in the interviews. If we could figure out they had a favorite candy or a favorite meal or something they were really into, we would send them as a part of the swag. Like, remember this one person said that like Swedish fish were their favorite thing. We sent them like 5 pounds of Swedish fish on their first day, right? Those people never left. Like, our turnover
Yeah.
rate was nil, right? Now we had to keep doing other things to keep that going. But people know on day one, they know in the first 2 minutes if they're going to make it 2 hours, and 2 hours if they're going to make it 2 days. And they know in 2 days if they're going to make it 2 weeks. And they know in 2 weeks if they're going to make it 2 months. And they know in 2 months if they're going to make it 2 years.
Mm.
Like, you've already kind of subconsciously made this decision of like, how long am I going to last in this job before I'm probably going to go look for something else or go somewhere else? And so you have this incredible ability right away to be like, we're the best place you're ever going to work. Day one. Here we go. Are you on board? You want to roll
So
with
good.
us? Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're like, whoa, I didn't realize you guys were this good. I'm not this good. I'm going to go over here and be crappy in this other company. Sometimes we have people that self-selected out. That's cool. Right. But that's what we did. Those are some of the ways you can manufacture some of that.
I love the intentionality. I think that's so powerful. And I think that's something any of our listeners can step into.
Mhm.
This is just it's not rocket science, right? It's learning how to value and appreciate people as individuals. That's what I'm hearing. I love that. You have to lead at a higher level today than you did 4 or 5 years ago. And the same thing is going to be true 4 or 5 years from now. Your team, your clients, all the people that you serve. How do you continue to develop the skills that you are going to need and your clients and team are going to need you to have in the years to come?
Years ago, I realized that I had a stack of books on my dresser, on my nightstand, that I had intended to read, but I never did read. And I got tired of my wife saying, well, are you going to read those things? Or are you going to put them away? Or are you going to, what are we doing here, buddy? You know? And so I had just read, this is a long, long time ago. I had just read The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
And I did not adopt a 4-hour work week, but what I did adopt was he has in there some of these ideas about how do you create a lever or a mechanism to make you do something.
Mm.
One of his levers is like, if I don't work out every single day, then I've got money in an escrow account that's going to go to like the worst organization I would ever want this money to go to. Like, and so there's somebody else in charge of the escrow account. And if I don't work out every day, then the money is being donated to worst organization killing babies.com or whatever this like horrible organization is, right? And so I didn't want to do that, but it was an interesting like mental exercise of how do you create the lever to make sure you're going to do the thing that you said you want to do. And for me, I wanted to read the books. So I thought about what motivates me. Well, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. If I commit to a group of people that I'm going to read a book or I'm going to do a thing or I'm going to show up or I'm going to write this report or I'm going to present this thing, hell or high water, I will do it. That is just how my DNA is, And I'm probably one of those idiots that'd be like, in a hospital room, like getting operated on with the Zoom open, going, I said I would be here, you know. So I realized I could invite people to a book club, create a book club. I need to facilitate that once a month. And by doing that, I made sure that I read 12 books, 12 really important books that were really what I needed to be thinking about and growing towards as a person, as a leader. So this is not reading, Harry Potter for the 900th time, or this is not reading, you know, Lord of the Rings or whatever. This is reading like, very specific intentional books, mostly business books, some biographies, some historical texts and things like that, or stoicism. But when I did that, then I was reading all the books and then getting in the habit of reading the book. Then when I was in between books, then I'd read another book, even though I didn't have to, right? Because I was in the habit of always, when I say read, I listen. That was another thing. I had to realize that I'm much more likely to finish the book if I listen to it because I can do it in the car. I can do it on the walk with the dogs. I can, have it in my ear. I can be doing work and have it in my ear and be listening. And so that was my mechanism to get that done. But I think ultimately, to answer your question, that is how I've been able to how do you keep your sword sharp? And that's to be constantly being exposed to new ideas and exposed to even old ideas, old books and things that I hadn't been exposed to. But then also to go and argue about that with a group of people. And to have that, what's important or not, because I can like read a book and be like, well, those are the three most important things. I got in the book club and they're like, no, 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 no. This was the most important. Oh, well, why did you think that? And to get those different perspectives and understand where different people are and different roles, that's kind of like that third element that really helps. And you're reminding me now that I was planning on kind of retooling the book club, and we're in the process of doing that. And I haven't read a book for a month. And I just, because I don't have that thing in there. I don't have that date set of when I had to have the book done by.
That's good. Systems you create determine the results that you get. I love that. So intentional again. As a reader, is there a book that's made a big difference in your journey that you'd recommend to the leaders who are listening?
I have about as many as you have behind you right now, probably to say. Let me throw out a couple of my favorites. I'll just give you the titles and maybe you tell me if you want to go deeper or want me to explain why on that one. So some of the ones that I really love are The Art of Gathering, The Great Game of Business. I'm trying to think what would be like the third one. I mean, I mentioned the 4-hour work week. I think that certainly like turned how you think about working on its head, even if you don't do 4-hour work week. And Good to Great is certainly,
Phenomenal.
and another like that kind of got me that first journey of how do I think about, that was the first step of getting eventually to how do you create the best place your people are going to work, right? That was that first thinking differently.
So talk to me about the Art of Gathering. I'm not familiar with that book. What was it about that book?
It's a great book. The author, she really talks about how do you create, this seems to be the theme of our podcast here today, is an intentional place, intentional space, an intentional way of meeting. And one of the things that I learned that created higher satisfaction amongst my employees was for us to get meetings right. So were we meeting intentionally? Were we meeting only as much as we needed to meet and not meeting more than we needed to meet? That's huge for most companies. Were we thinking about creating the rules and expectations of those different types of meetings? Now, she was setting up meetings for like Mideast peace treaties and all kinds of like really high stakes stuff. I'm talking about how do we talk about, our operational backlog today, But I learned two really important things from that. I had been in the camp of, I'm the cool guy. I'm not going to put too many rules on this. We can just meet. And what I learned was that the more the rules that are in place, the better people perform.
Mm. Mm.
So if you think about a party, what's the most popular party that you've attended your entire life? Do you know what it is?
No, I'd have to think about that. Nothing immediately
It's a
pops.
birthday party.
Well,
Birthday
there you go.
parties are significantly highly attended by the people that you invite. You invite 40 people to a birthday party, you get pretty close to that. I mean, you get a pretty close number, right?
That's
You
a
get
good
a
word.
lot of
Yeah,
people. Invite everyone over for a pool party on a Saturday that has no real reason or intention. I'm begging people to show up. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like you invite 40, you might get 15, you might get 12.
Mm.
And that's because a birthday party has a set of rules. We know exactly when to show up. We know what to do. We know what to bring. We know what's probably going to be served to eat. We know what happens when we sing and the candles get blown out. And we know like we're allowed to leave now,
It's good.
right? Like
Yeah,
there is no anxiety about what's going to happen in a birthday party. Now, there are some exceptions,
that's
but
really
like,
good.
right?
Yeah,
You invite me to a kid's birthday party. It's a locked in 2 hours. I know what's going to happen. I'm in and I'm out. I bring a present. I have no anxiety about that. I'm not
that's
going to
good.
screw it up, you know? But you invite me to like a dinner party and there's no like, it just who's going to be there? What are you going to serve? What's going to happen? Is this going to be all night? Are you going to be pouring me 9 bottles of wine and when am I going to be able to leave? And like,
Right.
personally, I'm happy with the 9 bottles and I'll stay all night and talk to you. But like some people have real anxiety about like, when do I get to go? And so my wife and I had taken our sons to Austria, Germany, and the Czech Republic over a summer. And I had made the mistake of telling them that if we go to a beer garden, they could have a beer. Because in Germany, they were legal to drink a beer or a rattler, as they call it, like half lemonade, half beer. They were not legal to drink in the United States at that time. And of course, being the smart gentlemen that they were, manipulated their way into a beer garden every single day, so they could have their little tiny beer. But we really loved checking out so many different beer gardens on our trip and the difference between the different countries. And so I decided we were going to come home and cancel our usual swim party where we invite 40 people and 12 people show up. And we were going to have a beer garden party. And so I invite 45 people to a beer garden party. Except this time I say we will only drink beer from Austria, Germany, or the Czech Republic. We will only have German food. You must dress up or wear German colors or Bavarian colors, but you got to do something to be festive, right? German soccer jersey, I don't care, but something. And the party will start at this time to this time. We will have a lifeguard for children. And then when the sun goes down, the children are not allowed and the Jägermeister is allowed. Like I was so prescriptive about the rules because I just read this book.
Mm.
Invited 45 people and 75 people showed up.
Whoa.
People brought people we didn't invite. Neighbors told neighbors I didn't even tell and they just came anyways. And the lesson I learned was when the people know the rules, when they know how to act and they know what's expected, they know what to do, and then they suddenly can relax and they can have fun, or they can do great work, or they can, whatever the reason for the meeting is. And so we took that back into the company and we started creating all these crazy meeting types: cockroach meetings, tiger team meetings, ostrich meetings, tsunami planning meetings, all of these little meeting types that had very prescriptive rules about how long the meeting was, what you were supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. And people loved it
Mm.
because it wasn't the same dumb or repeatable 30-minute meeting over and over and over.
It's good.
And so that was our intentional way of like, how do we help people meet when they need to meet, but clear all the crap out of their calendars? Because if you look at your calendar, does that reflect what you say your intentions are for your work? Does your calendar reflect your priorities?
Yeah.
And I guarantee right now it doesn't. And if you go back and you change how you meet, you'll be able to level set.
Chris, I could talk to you for another hour. This has been so fascinating. And I get to learn first before we ever air this episode. And I'm so grateful for that and for you sharing so generously from
Yeah, my
your
pleasure.
experience.
My pleasure.
I know folks are going to want to stay connected to you and learn more about what you're doing and get a copy of your book. What is the best way for them to do that?
Well, I think by the time this airs, they should be able to go to Amazon. March 24th, the book drops, Moments That Matter, Chris Dyer. Look for that. If for some reason you don't see it, you can always go to chrisdyer.com/moments, and I'm sure we'll have a link there to all the different places you can buy it. And happy to connect with anybody on all the different social media platforms, or if you bring in speakers to your organization, I'm happy to talk to you about that.
Love it. We'll have all those links in the show notes. Chris, thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much.